What's up, guys? It's Justin Kahn. Welcome to my new show, OnlyFriends, where me and three of my crazy successful friends shoot the shit about our lives, the latest tech drama, and our behind-the-scenes stories. OnlyFriends is where my Silicon Valley group chat comes to life. We're trying something new on the channel, and I hope you enjoy it. Today, I'm joined by Jamie Quint, startup founder, investor, head of growth at famous companies like Notion, Reddit, and I'm sure other ones I'm forgetting. I have Tikon Bernstam, amazing angel investor, venture capitalist, founder of Scribd, Parse. Anything else I'm leaving off? I'm sure I'm butchering these intros. And my Justin TV and Twitch co-founder, Twitch CEO, Emmett Shear, someone I've known since the second grade. I'm going to work on the intros, I promise, but that's who's joining today. And this is a very special starter show, actually, because this is the 14th anniversary. I don't know if you guys know this. It's the 14th anniversary of Justin.tv, the launch of Justin TV. Yeah, that's how fucking old you guys are.
I remember when you first pitched that idea to Paul Graham. I was actually at his house in Cambridge. And I remember, and Paul Graham, was and still is my idol. And when you guys pitched that idea, I was like, this is the worst idea I've ever heard. Paul's going to I feel so bad for these guys. And Paul was like, I love that. I'm going to put in $50,000. And I was like, I know nothing about startups or investing. Like, my God.
But then did you feel later on that you did know
That's exactly
something?
right.
Yeah. Later on, did you feel like, oh, I was right? These guys are fucking awful.
No, obviously I'm rooting for you guys.
All right, Emmett.
No, but you were right, Tikon. The original idea was terrible.
Emmett.
Like, the original idea actually wasn't good.
I mean, this was the original idea, as you were kind of preluding to in the.
Yeah. The original idea was we were going to sit around and have our discussions about technology, and people would want to listen to us, which I don't think that was a great idea. But then we pivoted it to it would be a live feed of Justin's life all the time. And Justin, you're very interesting, but you're not that interesting. That was not a good idea.
I think I'm more interesting now. Back then.
Yeah, you're way more interesting now.
We were just sitting around programming. It wasn't like I had this fantasy that our life would be like Entourage, but it really was more like it was kind of like Silicon Valley, except just not funny.
No, Silicon Valley is is the accelerated version of it. It's like Silicon Valley if every episode takes 3 months. So you're just very slowly, because they do hit most of the plot points. It's just instead of it being compressed into a season you can binge watch in one day, it's 5 years of your life.
Silicon Valley.
Startups are way too slow for TV. Nobody wants to watch anyone build a startup live.
It's horrible.
Silicon Valley actually hit.
That shit takes decades.
It hit a lot of the topics, or kind of the plot points. I remember they had UFC restreams. That was something that happened at Justin TV. They had a lot of downtime, the server crashing. They had that one episode where they watched a falcon's nest or something, or a condor's nest. You remember that? And
I don't think I missed that one.
I think that was literally something that happened on our site.
Silicon Valley did I have to say, it's obviously an over-exaggerated version, but I was impressed by how they hit the beats feel real. They feel painfully real a lot of the time, where I'm like, yes, that is basically what happened. Except, exaggerated and actually funny instead of lame. It's close.
All right, for the sake of,
I love it when they bring in the professional CEO. That might be one of the best parts.
He takes the plane, the private plane to Jackson, both he and the
the concentric circles of success, or conjoined triangles of success. Yeah.
Okay, for the sake of introducing everybody, Emmett, why don't you tell the story of how we got up to, how we started Justin TV, and then we'll chime in with Tikon how you found your way into YC, and then Jamie.
So, the start of Justin TV is our previous startup had failed, and we were trying to figure out what startups to start next. And this really proves that they're all successful startups mission driven is false, because we knew we wanted to start a startup and had we're not sure what idea. We were just we're gonna figure out an idea and then we'll do that. And we were driving around trying to figure out what to do, and somehow wound up riffing our way into a live stream of Justin's life. The moment that I actually think that was the turning point for us doing it was we were at this party, and Chuck Foreman says to Justin, as he's explaining the idea, "You're full of shit. You're never actually going to do that. You're not actually going to start Justin TV." And with any sane people, he would have been right, but he was wrong. we were in fact going to go do that. And like, I think part of like, I actually think we partly felt kind of like dared to do it. Like I felt dared to do it. Like it was so crazy. And like people, when I told other startup people, they're like, you're doing what? And I liked that reaction. I felt like I was doing something cutting edge. I think it really was mostly just stupid, but it worked out, right? And then
Exactly.
we ended up turning it into software everybody else can use, and like, it worked. I feel like there's something to be said for building stuff that's just ridiculous, that does something that's like kind of a ridiculous stunt that gets a reaction, because you never know what's on the other side of that like experiment. We didn't know. Like could never have predicted what it turned into.
Back.
The reason I'm most glad that we started Justin TV, like of all of them, is that by starting Justin TV, we shanghaied Michael to come out to the West Coast, and then we moved into Crystal Towers and got to like hang out with all of our friends in like one place. Mm-hmm. And like that's actually probably the most valuable thing I got out of the entire Justin TV experience, if I had to pick something.
All right, so let's talk.
That's where Tikon comes in.
Let's talk about that. Crystal Towers.
Yeah,
Tikon,
that was so interesting because I was still in Boston and I was talking to you two, and Justin, you said, I found a building that's month to month and has almost no security deposit. And like that was like those were the selling points for this building. And I was like, whoa. And like to me, moving to San Francisco, that was like the big leagues, like we were all like swimming in Cambridge, like in Boston. Yeah, Justin and Emmett ended up moving out there with Kyle and Michael, and we ended up getting a ton of the people from Y Combinator, like from the startups, to all move out there. You had like Reddit there, you had. Weebly was there, Dropbox was there, and we were all working and living out of these like small, mostly 2-bedroom, 1-bath apartments.
It seemed fine to me though, because it was like right out of college though. So you're just like, well, whatever. This is awesome. I have a view.
They had great views. Like I've never had a view as good as Crystal Towers in all the time I've lived in San Francisco since then. Yeah. It was just a stunning like view of the bay.
Like we had a view. I don't understand how we right there.
Yeah, and the lighthouse like beamed into my bedroom like every night. If you didn't like set up a screen, it would like flash into my eyes.
Yeah, and then we call it the Y scraper because I think we were at some point almost half the tenants. I forgot other startups there like Zobni. The Airbnb stayed on your floor, like didn't they? For a bit, and so you had so many YC companies come through there. It just became this like great community where we were all able to hang out. We played poker there, like on the Justin TV show, where we'd work, and then we would all be able to hang out on the side. And frankly, I mean, back then, tech was so uncool, no one else would have wanted to hang out with us anyway. So that was kind of all we had.
Jamie, did you live there?
It's also, I think...
I was in, was it 903?
903.
Yeah, I think so. Well, and then 1103 or 1106. I don't remember. I was there for a while. I remember when the elevator broke, and it was a story on TechCrunch because there were so many startups that were in the building that somehow, like, and that's how small TechCrunch was at the time. They were writing stories about elevators breaking in startups' apartment buildings. Yeah, it was a great time. That's how I met everybody. I remember reading about Y Combinator. It must have been like in 2006, or joining Startup News when like PG started Startup News in, I think it was 2006. And actually met my co-founders, like my first company, on Startup News, on Hacker News, and we were like, oh, we have to go to San Francisco. I was born in the Bay Area, but I grew up in Portland, so we moved back, I moved back, and my co-founders are both British, like convinced them to come out for the summer, and they're like just on tourist visas, and like we're like, oh, we have to do this like YC thing, and we met all the people that were like already living in like the Y scraper, even though we hadn't even moved yet, and then ended up moving down. And it was awesome. It was like great introduction to meeting everybody, and then eventually to doing YC.
It's kind of like a startup.
There's a real value of the support group. I think it's like a support group. It was sort of like a dorm, like
but it's like a dorm / support group.
But it's also like it's hard to talk to people who aren't facing the same challenges. The challenges you face as a startup founder are very different than the also very difficult challenges you face doing something else. And so having other people who really get what you're going through and are suffering through the same pains at the same time is like, I think, really meaningful. that was I know.
I don't think most of those
to me when
startups
we were doing
work
it.
without
One of
that
the
community and both the YC like program and then also that like building because it just enabled us because there are so many highs and lows, right? You think your startup is dead every week for some different reason. In our case, we get de-indexed by Google or something like that for Scribd. For like black hat SEO, but being able to like go like commiserate with other people who are in the
Shouldn't have
same
broken
boat,
the
like
rules,
don't worry,
you
like
guys.
I thought that Justin TV was dead yesterday, and like you guys will be okay. And it actually looked really. I don't think we would have made it without that.
What do you think it was about the early talent that was in the Y Scraper? So one of the things I remember years later, Michael and I were talking about the Y Scraper, and Michael's like, Michael Seibel, our co-founder and first CEO of Justin TV, who eventually is now the CEO of Y Combinator, he's saying like, man, we just happened to be with all of these smart people. Like, how did that happen? And I was kind of like, I don't know. I feel like all these people were kind of in the right place at the right time, But now you have these companies that are huge successes, right? Like Weebly sold to Square, Dropbox, obviously a huge success, Twitch, Reddit, Scribd. So what was it about those early times?
I still think it was just this idea of sort of founder market fit where we had all these strong founders and some of us were in terrible markets and some were in good ones. The ones who were in bad ones had time and the support group and like the sort of community to figure out they were in a bad market and pivot or change their product. I mean, much like Justin TV you guys ended up refocusing the whole thing on just the video game angle. I mean, also it's interesting, right? Because the actual like market for all these internet startups was much, much smaller. You had relatively few people on like high speed internet. So the market for what we could do was smaller, but we also didn't have that much competition.
That's
I think
true.
there was that was the right place to get started. Like if you were getting started in startups in 2006, 2007, doing tech, your tech startup in San Francisco, we get a month to month 2-bedroom rent controlled apartment with views of the bay for $2,500 a month. That's ludicrous now. Like, and it was just so much cheaper to get started. And there was so much less competition, like literally competition for real estate, but like competition for engineering talent, competition for whatever. And like, yes, there was also like, I remember the amounts of money we were trying to raise were comical. Like we're trying to raise like $300,000, which now would be like, I don't know, like I don't think they name those rounds anymore. And like
Pre-angel round.
Pre-angel round,
It's like you find that in the back seat of some investor's car.
Your mom.
Well, now people raise that money online. Like people raise that money online with like angel. The angel list didn't exist. None of the tools for raising really existed. Demo day wasn't anything like Demo day today from YC. And so it was way harder to raise money. I think I will 100% take as if you give me a trade-off, like harder to raise money, but no competition. That's way better. Like if a crowded space where everyone's trying to compete with you sucks.
Yeah, I remember our first company was like we raised $1.6 million, and I think the doc said Series A, which now that's like not even a seed round. That's like a third of a seed round or something like that. So I think it was just like a lot of people who were like really excited to be here because it wasn't like you were doing tech and it was paying you a bunch of money. It was like there was no, even Google was like the biggest company at the time, and it was like, okay, like you get a job at Google or Microsoft, and it's like I remember one of our early employees had another offer from Microsoft in 2008 or something like that, and it was like he was gonna get $100,000 coming out of school, and that's it. It was like wow, including like a signing bonus, like, and now it's like these kids coming out of school, they're getting like 200K offers right out of school with like a $50,000 signing bonus, and like even if you adjust for inflation, that's like insane amounts higher than like anyone was getting in 2006, 2007. So you had to like really just want to be here for what people were working on and stuff like that. It's very different.
So I think that all the time, but I also think like, is that just the old guy view of like back in the day I had to like, it was so much better? Because I do think that 14 years ago, Silicon Valley was not cool, and it was attracting all the people who really wanted to build something on with technology. And now it's all the people who have gone into investment banking. But am I just like a jaded old guy now?
Well, I think you just get both. You're getting both. It's like you get the first people, and then you get a lot of the second people, and it's like I don't know if there's more of one or the other, but it's not just. There are no people who would be thinking about considering investment banking or tech in like 2007. you know, if you wanted to make a lot of money, you weren't going to go work in tech. So I think now you have those people in Silicon Valley, and you didn't back then.
I just feel like that it's just so much easier to start a startup now. Like one of the things that like I'm always envious of people starting startups now is like you don't just have AWS, which we didn't have when we got started, but like you've got layers and layers of things like payments is a good example, right? Like Stripe will just solve that problem for you now. Huge amounts of what you had to do, like we had to put physical servers into data centers and like put them in the back of my Honda Civic and drive them around. Like it was a strange time to be starting a technology. Like, dude, I don't think it really was different. Like it really was still very early, and like the startup stack of like technology that makes it easier just didn't exist.
Do you remember?
Yeah, like it took like 2 weeks to be able to accept payments. Like you had to go like get a merchant account at the bank, and you had to like fill out this like paper application. And,
I mean,
back
there's
to
never
the
been a
bank.
better time to be a startup founder than now. I mean, raising money is so much easier.
Totally.
I mean, hiring, I suppose, can be hard, but just the sheer market for ideas has expanded so quickly. I think faster probably than like the various markets. I think are expanding faster even than all the venture capital going in.
Emmett, do you remember? I mean, it's also much cooler to be in the tech now. Like there is money, like people see it as a career. You know, it's not just like 21-year-old men. You know, it's much more diverse. Do you remember what our parties were like in Crystal Tower? They were worse than the parties in college. It was like all dudes.
Oh, they're so bad.
You know, drinking beer, someone would pass out.
Not all dudes. We had some women who were like friends, like, but like
I don't think so. I think you're
yeah.
you're misremembering.
I remember Laurence, right, cooking with Michael. We had like that was a whole show.
There was
Like we did a whole show
Justin
about
would go
that.
to the bar. Justin would go to the bar with the camera on his head, and if they didn't kick him, not let him into the bar because he was wearing a camera on his head, then he might have like a small percentage chance of meeting a not 21-year-old male.
It was very hard. San Francisco is a dead zone. It was a dead zone.
I mean, San Francisco, I don't know about that. Crystal Towers, maybe. Yeah, that's probably.
I mean,
fair.
the highlights of the parties that were there, it was like, I remember the Wheatley's apartment. Everybody would just get drunk. They would throw things off the roof, literally, like printers, electronics.
And why did?
And
And we were the ones that got evicted.
yeah, and then we eventually paid the price and got evicted from Justin TV.
Well, I think the
Past
building
statute
had
of
it out for you
limitations
guys
on
for
that
so
Yeah.
long. They were so they would have looked for any excuse to get rid of you guys. I think it was actually my roommate Trips from Scrib.
Oh, yeah.
His saxophone at like 2-3 in the morning that actually triggered all the complaints. Outdoors, we were partying.
I mean, we were terrible people, like terrible room, like
Oh my
building
God.
mates.
If you had to live next to any
Like,
of us back then,
Yeah, Trip
oh my
brought his
God.
saxophone to the roof, which we weren't supposed to go off to. It was like a dead drop off the
Yeah.
side of the building, and played a saxophone at 3 a.m., which eventually prompted our, that's what initiated the eviction proceedings against Justin TV.
we didn't deserve it
Amazing
more
you
than
were
everyone
able
else.
to get evicted in San
But-
Francisco with like a feat.
That's true, but we didn't deserve it more than anyone else. But we did deserve it. In retrospect, I feel like we owe the city like an apology for being young and stupid, like hooligans. I feel like we've become better citizens of the city over time.
Well, I
We
mean,
care a lot more about like current events.
that's ironic because like only of all four of us, only Jamie is now living in San Francisco. We've become better
true.
residents of other cities.
I lived in San Francisco right up until COVID, and the only reason I wasn't in San Francisco during COVID was I really wanted to be able to go outside, and I met a wonderful woman and got to move down to like be with her, and also I really wanted to be able to go outside like during the day because it's horrible to be stuck inside during the lockdown.
What do you guys think
But,
happens to SF post coronavirus? Like, does it come back, bounce back? How many people do you guys think have left? Like, is it coming back? Is everybody successful leaving for Miami or for Austin, or what's the world look like? Or LA?
Haven't rents dropped like 30%?
Yeah.
Yeah, they're going back. They're starting to go back up. House prices are starting to go back up, actually, especially still for places that have like backyards and stuff. Because I've been tracking stuff around where we live in like Nopa area, and I've seen a bunch of stuff starting to sell for like above market or above listing. for like reasonable listing prices, not stuff just like underlisted, which even like a few months ago was not happening at all. So I feel like it's going to go back up a little bit into the end of COVID, and like people are going to get excited about San Francisco again, but long term.
Never underestimate San
I don't know if
Francisco.
the
It has
city can turn
continuously
itself around.
snatched defeat
Well-
from the jaws of victory at every opportunity, as long as I've been there.
I don't know. I feel like I'm actually much more pro SF. Like I think there's a good chance we wind up post pandemic moving back and being able to, just it's where my community is.
Oh,
And
really?
actually, as much as it, like I don't know, like I love LA. Like it's been amazing. I thought I would always hate LA, and I really like getting to see what's great about LA and what's amazing about the city. And at the same time, I don't know. San Francisco has a lot going for it in terms of the people. Like fundamentally, the people I like are still that I know that I've come up with over the past 13 years in the city are in San Francisco, and I think people over time may move out to maybe more into like the suburbs or whatever of San Francisco, or the South Bay, East
Yeah, I
Bay.
think a
North
lot of the
Bay.
people who left San Francisco, a lot of them did move to like Oakland, Piedmont, Alameda, the Bay Area. I mean, one kind of gloomy future for San Francisco would be as sort of a company town, right, where a bunch of Google and Facebook employees hop on the bus and go down to the like South Bay. But like the smaller startups, I do worry about. Like there's so many that I know now are just going fully remote. I think San Francisco real estate is going to come back in some, I mean, especially with all these IPOs, like the Coinbase IPO, although a lot of their executives have actually left. I think none of their biggest executives are still in San Francisco. Yeah.
Well, I think that's true of a lot of teams. Is like their entire executive team, like the rank and file have stayed in San Francisco. And a lot of the executive team were just like, peace.
I feel like San Francisco still has the network effect going for it that of cities. I'm more bearish on San Francisco for the same reason I'm bearish on any like denser city, which is I don't think the premium to pay to be near the labor market's worth as much now as it used to be because there's being a lot more work from home. Mm-hmm. That's just a secular change across the entire economy in every city that makes it you more free to live wherever, and so your people, in general, it will redistribute people from expensive places to cheaper places because they can like live a nicer life for the same amount of money. I think that is definitely
all
coming.
these companies it's crazy how these companies seem to like their employees want to do this like hybrid thing, which seems like the worst thing of all worlds. It's like you're in the office like 2 days a week, so you still have to live in the expensive city, and then you have to have like home office space because you have to work from home 3 days a week in the expensive city, and like the company still has to have office space. I'm like, how do we come up with like the worst possible solution to like remote work?
What
like
I've heard,
the companies that are doing full remote make much more sense to me.
What I've heard from the Twitch employees I've talked to has been like, it's hybrid, but it's not like everyone goes in 2 days a week. It's like some people love work from home and want to do work from home almost all the time, and some people are really sick of work from home and really want to go into the office and would like to be in the office 5 days a week. And it seems like there might be a future that's hybrid that's more like some people work out of the office and some people are remote, which I don't know. That seems that's how it was before. I think the remote percentage will go up.
Do you think that permanently disadvantages people who are remote from getting promoted into the management layer at many companies? Because I feel like most companies have, not good remote policy where they're not going to be like people who are present. They have FaceTime. They're going, they can have be more in the nexus of information at many of these companies. Like I think I agree with Ticon where San Francisco and the Bay Area is going to be this huge bastion of the kind of management class at the FANG companies.
I mean, that's probably true.
I definitely think it'll be harder. Yeah.
But like
unless it's Coinbase, like, and everyone's remote. Like, if half the execs are remote, then it's probably not harder. But it's probably not harder getting promoted from one of the execs that's remote. But still, it's like in person probably is the thing.
Okay, what about the policy in San Francisco? Like we've seen, this has been covered a lot on Twitter, on other podcasts. Like San Francisco, I feel like crime had gotten really, really out of hand by the time that I left 9 months ago. Like, what do you guys think that's going to be reversed as people come back to the city?
I mean, crime's pretty nuts. Like, it's it's hard to tell like how much it is way higher and how much it's just like being more covered by the press. But if you look at the stats of San Francisco compared to like other cities during COVID, it's like everywhere had crime drop during COVID because people are like locked inside. But comparably, San Francisco dropped for a lot of different types of crime, like auto theft and home invasion robberies, like other stuff, like less than other cities. Yeah, it's not great. I think the thing that makes it worse is like people feel like the city doesn't care because of basically the DA, and like people are feeling like they're just not, he's like, well, we can't have trials because of COVID, and so we can't have people in the courthouse, so we just have to like let them go free unless they like killed someone or did something like really bad, and then like those people are running people over drunk and killing them, and all sorts of stuff, and yeah, it doesn't feel great.
How about LA? Is LA LA has also seen a similar crime spike, right?
Yeah, we actually have that DA
Yeah.
Gascon, who I think used to be in San Francisco and has some affiliation with Chesa. So he's actually, I think they're actually trying to recall Gascon as well right now. Emmett, go ahead.
I was going to say, I just anecdotally, I live in Echo Park, which is a neighborhood in LA that's, not the ritziest, but it's nice. It's a great coffee, which is one of my primary.
That's how you decide where to live.
And yeah, I mean, it's one of the major contributors, and it's sad, like the amount of like homelessness and the amount of like trash that winds up on the streets as a result. But actually, the city started cleaning up the trash now a lot more, and like actually, I don't know. I feel really safe. I walk around at night. I feel totally safe. We have like the neighborhood's really active. Like you get to see your neighbors. My actual experience living here is that I don't feel unsafe, at least in this neighborhood. It doesn't seem like there's that much crime happening. There's like not bars on everybody's windows or anything. Although there are. It's funny, you can see the more recent versus the older construction, because there's clearly a period in the time where there was really bad crime and there's bars on all the older buildings' windows. But then everything post, I don't know, maybe it seems like everything maybe after 1990 or 1995 is like no bars. So something good happened.
That was when it started to be gentrified.
I mean,
Yeah, I don't know, probably. But like the neighborhood has a lot of people who've been here for a long time.
But also, like, I mean, this has happened before, right? Like cities like New York in the 1970s where had these incredible crime rates and things got out of control. And this almost just feels like a little bit cyclical. Where, I mean, it doesn't help that California has this like basically only one political party. I don't really care which party. It's just when you only have one party running things, doesn't tend to be great when there's no choice. I am. Unless I'm running the startup in question.
Pro competition.
How does that get solved on the state level, where you have certain states which are basically a monopoly in one party or the other, and neither of them. Our friend Matt Fong likes to bring up that's like bad for them on either side of this political spectrum. Like, how do you think that gets solved, or does it get solved?
I'm pessimistic, but one point of optimism would be that recent California ballot initiative to explicitly add discrimination, as I think Emmett put it, to explicitly add discrimination to the California state constitution, where we used to have like a no discrimination policy, and that that ballot initiative was resoundingly repudiated by a sort of multiracial anti-woke coalition. So that would be one sort of bright spot for optimism.
Yeah, the ballot initiative.
I don't know that I believe it's an anti-woke coalition.
Okay.
I don't think it was an anti-woke coalition. I think it's just a more or less people read like the text of the initiative and they were like, this doesn't sound. I don't get it. Like, this sounds bad. It sounds like you're saying we should be able to discriminate on the basis of race. No. And I think that the people who are in favor of that initiative,
you have a little bit too much hope in people.
Yeah.
Reading the ballot initiative.
Well,
it's got to be less than 1% of the voters.
No, I think people. I know. I really do. I believe the people who voted on that ballot initiative read what it was, and said, no, it doesn't sound good to me. I don't think we should do that. And I think they may. The people who are in favor of that ballot initiative probably have some like reasonable arguments that like, well, some people are like have past discrimination, so we need to be able to positively discriminate in their favor in order to like help them. That kind of makes sense to me, except that it does actually wind up saying we need to add discrimination back into the Constitution. And that people don't like that. I think that fundamentally it wasn't the argument about like the theoretical pros and cons. I think people mostly vote from a place of like moral justification.
And so the ballot initiative was, I think it was put into place because they wanted to be able to do positive discrimination or affirmative action on the basis of race for college admissions, right? For the UC schools, which are, the top UC schools have a disproportionate amount of Asians. I think that the net result of it was that at places like Berkeley, which is I think about 60% Asian or something like that, and maybe 20% white, that the percentage of Asians would go down, and actually the percentage of rich, wealthy white students would go up, right? As well as the percentage of blacks and Latino students.
The problem with that is it's like the First Amendment in some level. Like I understand the reasoning behind wanting to ban speech that has negative impacts, because there is such a thing as speech that has negative impacts, and I understand the desire to positively discriminate in favor of people who have been harmed, because like that can be good. There are people who have been harmed, and we do want to help them. The problem is like once you open the door to like censoring people and like discrimination by the government on the basis of race being legal, like you don't know where that gun turns next. Like just because you have good intentions empowering the government to do this thing doesn't mean the next person with that wielding that power will have good intentions. Like you should always, I think, consider passing these kinds of laws with the idea that like the worst person from the other party you can think of is going to be in power next. And do you want them to be able to make that decision?
We've kind of stopped considering things that way, like as a society, right? Because, it's kind of, we've gone to this one-upsmanship or brinksmanship where, like the Democrats were super in favor of all these executive orders when Obama was the president, and then as soon as Trump became president, started passing all sorts of like Trumpian executive orders. People were like freaking out, like it was the end of the world, right? But then there's no rhetoric now that we should, maybe we should reduce the power of executive orders, or the same is true on all these other kind of woke war fronts, right? Where people are kind of moving away from liberal values, like small L liberal values, and moving towards, I don't like this speech, so you should be allowed to say it, or you should be canceled, or like, do you think that ever swings back?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I actually think that I think the defeat of that initiative shows that the actual support for like liberal values, the free speech, non-discrimination, equality before the law, is actually like deep and strong in America. I think there may be a lot of people online on social media who feel strongly that that's not the case, but I think the American people in general are in fact pretty much in favor of freedom, like in that sense, in the sense of like they actually believe in the First Amendment, they believe in the Second Amendment, like whether you agree with it or not, like that seems to be the like de facto that's what's happening. And so I don't know. As speaking as someone who believes in the liberal values myself, like I think the most important thing happening in politics is the left seems to be splitting into what I think is being called like the liberals and the leftists, like people, which basically is split on, do you believe that the liberal values are important? Like that there's sort of this on principle, even Nazis should have freedom of speech. On principle, like, even no matter what your intention is, you can't discriminate, even if it's for a good reason. That's like pro-social. Or not? Do you believe in those principles?
Yeah,
of like
a really good
straight up
example of that
equality
is
before
that
the law. You're not believing.
Oh, sorry. Yeah,
and I think that,
a really good example
I
of
think
that is the ACLU. They used to defend anybody. They would defend the worst people on like what today would be called the far alt-right, and they would defend them because it was like they're like that person's right to free speech. Nowadays, it's quite the opposite. They would never take a case they would never take a lot of the cases that they took back in the day.
Yeah, like Ira Glasser, who's like the former head of the ACLU, has this like talk where he's like talking about this. I think he was interviewed on Rogan or something like that, and he was talking about it, and he was like talking about the case where they literally defended Nazis. They were marching in this town where a bunch of people who had like survived the Holocaust lived, and he was talking about how he became like a friend with like one of these guys, that Ira Glasser, the former head of the ACLU, became a friend of one of these guys who was like a formerly in a concentration camp, and he was like, the other guy didn't necessarily come to agree with him, but he came to understand him because Ira Glasser has this like exactly what you were saying, where it's like you have to defend like the liberal values because like you don't know who's going to be in control. Like the best law is like when you make the law and then you hand it over to your worst enemy to apply to you, you know, because that's like what's going to happen eventually. So you know, when you create these laws, or you're like the example you were giving about or Justin was giving about the Obama presidential stuff and then Trump and then whatever, it's like, well, we shouldn't want the executive branch to have too much power ever. It doesn't matter like who's running the country, because at some point,
Yeah, I think it was Naval.
You know,
I think it was Naval who said that the test of a good
happened,
system
so-
is if you can put your enemies in charge for 10 years, and like if you still want to be there afterwards. And I think that's kind of what like Emmett was saying.
What about the intersection?
This is why I'm so like optimistic about America, because like it was we had 4 years of like, in my opinion, not particularly good leadership, and actually, like, I mean, don't get me wrong, you know, you have things have consequences, but the system like more or less survives. Like, and I think that's actually a testament to the American system that like that it is resistant. We can have high quality leadership, poor quality leadership, and the system keeps working.
Is that true across age groups though, or is it like, you know, if you were to survey like younger people, obviously like they believe in like things like capitalism and liberal values at like lower rates than people who are older. Is that just like this happens when you're younger and changes when you're older, or is that like a generational shift? And then what happens if we see another generation?
Yeah, I want to see the cohort analysis on that.
Right.
Well, the trend is towards.
I mean, listen.
Yeah, the trend is towards liberal.
Listen to us talking about like living in the. We were like, oh yeah, the cities. There's always crime and like they're. I don't like it. We gotta move to the suburbs. Well, guess what? We're in our 30s now, and like that's what happens. People are having babies. You know, they're starting families, and like suddenly the thing that like, look, why would I ever want to live in a suburb? That sounds boring. It's like, oh, I can have like space for my kids and like good schools, and like I don't want to like I don't want it to be so loud and dirty anymore. Well, you know, I know people get older, their preferences change. So I think so I'm like more sanguine about the political thing. For like young people always want to revolutionize and burn the system down. And that's why it's good that young people only represent some percentage of the votes, not all of them.
Young people are in their proper place as a minority of the votes.
Yeah, well, it's good that if everyone voting, if you only took the votes from like 24-year-olds, the system would be like wildly oscillating in like really dangerous ways, all way over here, way over there, because like it's like a you know, one of those hill climbing algorithms, like simulated annealing, right? The system's super hot. People's opinions are very changing a lot and really bright, and they're like really excited. And then you get older, and you start to calcify a little bit, and your opinions get like a little bit more moderate. And you know, it's good there's a balance, and you need the young people too. Otherwise, the
So
system
how does
never
Emmett?
changes.
So how does your optimism for America square with sort of some people's concerns about like the fact, like I think Jamie was getting to this, but that like a lot of younger people are even more woke than sort of average, and they're taking over positions of power from the Biden boomers, and kind of what happens when those people kind of have more power and more influence, and they already have a lot.
Yeah, I mean every 20, 30 years, maybe it's 40 years. I can't remember exactly. You have to go back and look at the trends. But you have the great what was called the Great Reformation. You have the
Great Reset.
but it's usually on the left or on the right. Like it varies. But there's like an almost religious movement that appears. The last one was the religious right coming out in like the 90s and like really swinging a bunch of elections, and then kind of like you don't hear that much about the religious right anymore. And you know, the sort of critical race theory woke movement isn't exactly a religious movement, but it shares a lot of things in common with one. And I think it's the left's, it's reemerged on the left, and there's this sort of push for moral purity and against original sin, which everyone is committed, which is in this case structural racism. And I don't know, there's something, they're always right at some level, right? At some level, it's always true that like human beings are fundamentally flawed, and we have committed grievous sin in the past, and we're all born with like the capability for horrible harm within us, and beneficiaries of horrible harms that have been done in the past. And there's a push for people to try to like purify themselves and leave that behind. I don't know. And then the wave crashes and we survive and we move on.
Some religions have the principle of grace, though, and other ones have the principle of cancellation. So,
I mean, but
to say that
there is grace, like except like you're check your privilege. If you just check your privilege, you too can be saved. Like there's a whole process for leaving behind the structural racism which is original sin, and like I don't think that's I don't know I think it's easy to like get to think that it's the end of the world, and like I may not necessarily entirely like I'm just describing this thing I'm not like totally part of, but like all these movements, it's coming from a place where people like there is this real suffering and real problem that the reaction is really to. It's not like fucking made up. I don't know. I'm less worried. I don't think I don't think it's gonna like be the end of society. I think it's gonna like push us kind of in this one direction for a while, and then that energy will dissipate as they succeed, and then we'll get pushed back in some other direction by some other new energy.
So how do you think this resolves itself? Like, what is there a breaking point, or is it just kind of like a, it ends with not with a bang but a whimper?
Yeah, not with a bang but a whimper. People only have energy for so many things they can pay attention to at once, and eventually everything gets boring, and people move on. And like it's true with every religious movement. It's true with like it was true with the witch hunting the communists. Like the communists went away, Hollywood's still full of communists. We just got bored of hunting them, and it turned out it didn't matter. Like that's the actual thing that happened. And so I don't know. My theory is like, I actually think there's some upsides, even though I disagree in many ways. Like a lot of the stuff that happens under like the woke banner, I like strongly disagree with because I do really believe in liberal values. I think there's some amount of stuff that's actually bad that's getting called out. Like the Me Too movement is a great example of this. Like Weinstein or whoever really probably should have gone to jail. That was fucked up. Like when I was like, that's really serious. Like so, like there's a lot of bad shit too. So I don't know. It's mixed. Like most of these things, it's like mixed, and the people trying to do it have good intentions, even though I think they should really, really, really consider what happens on the principle of like what weapon you're handing to your enemy is when they're in power. Like I think that's a really important question that is not the woke. If I was gonna like, I am with you, all the same goals, but like let's not set ourselves up for the reversal.
All right. Anyone else have
which is inevitably coming?
Any final thoughts on wokeism, or should we move on?
Well, I mean, yeah, like I don't know. Some of it is good. Like you catch a Weinstein, but you get rid of Title IX. Like I don't know. You pay the cost on both ends. So, like obviously, like you want people like that to be in jail because it's horrible. But at the same time, you can't just like go around trampling people's like into people's rights to like a free trial or to a fair trial or to be fairly treated or something like that, and in the name of accomplishing some other goal, which is kind of like the same thing that you see with like a lot of this stuff. So
that's like the problem with social media now, right? Like I think this is actually, Justin, I'm curious what you think about this, but like I think we've a lot of the social norms that governed like newspapers, like the way you did journalism or whatever, got obliterated because we shifted everything to social media and everyone's a journalist now. And like look at Clubhouse is a great example of like everyone's a journalist now. And you've been doing a bunch of Clubhouse. How do you think do we evolve social norms that like are over time more reasonable and kind, or does it just actually become an ever escalating like whoever is loudest and angriest wins?
Well, Clubhouse is interesting because it's a form of social media that I really love, and I'm on Clubhouse like all the time now. That is much kinder and has much more, I guess, pro-social norms than previous forms of social media. Like Twitter, like you get rewarded on Twitter for like whoever can dunk on somebody else the hardest, right? Like if you just quote tweet someone and just say something that just obliterates them. It doesn't have to be factually. It just like obliterates them you know, through your rhetoric, then you get the most likes and retweets, and that makes you feel some type of way, and then that's amazing for you, right? But with Clubhouse, you actually have to talk with people face to face, and so I think it's just much more polite, and people are much more willing to come together, because I think there's something harder about having a conversation and they're just like totally trying to flex on someone in a conversation. It's just, again, it's kind of an antisocial instinct, and most people don't have that instinct. Right, it's a lot easier to do it over the written word than it is to do it over voice.
You also kind of look like if someone's listening to both of you in the conversation, they have to kind of hear both of you talk.
Yeah.
And you sound like an asshole if you're just like trying to like dunk on them.
Exactly.
And like, woo, yeah, take that.
People are much more willing to be assholes kind of pseudonymously or through like the written word than they are in person, So I think.
Well, it's interesting because Xbox party chat for games would, like for Halo, would disagree with you.
That's true, but it's not tied to your name, right? Like Xbox, you're like, incredibly built.
You
or
might
whatever,
as well be anonymous.
And then
you
can just scream obscenities at other 13-year-olds. I was actually playing VR game the other day, and it was kind of hilarious. I was like, yeah, I'm stuck with all these little kids who keep like yelling, and they could hear me actually. I was talking to Christine with my VR headset on or whatever, and then they were like, hey, who the fuck is this guy? But like on Clubhouse, it's like it's a different world. So that's one of the reasons I'm really pro Clubhouse. Well, I mean, which kind of leads me to another topic I want to talk about, which is Clubhouse versus Twitter, or maybe more generally like startups versus big tech. Because like I think big tech has gone through this transition where 10 years ago everybody had their own swim lane. They had like Amazon was e-commerce and Google was search and Facebook was social, and then over the last 10 years everybody has it's kind of evolved like China. We used to look at Chinese tech and it was like everybody was doing everything. Like every Chinese tech company had their own search engine, their own shopping, their own social media. And we were like, wow, it's really a red ocean over there. And it's like we're so much better or more evolved in some way. Everybody kind of like lets their own, the company that figured it out, like kind of do it independently. And then now it seems like it's evolving. The world's evolving that way. And you have Twitter cloning Clubhouse, and every company competing with every other company. So like, how do you think that plays out? Like, is Clubhouse fucked?
I like someone was like, Twitter's product strategy is to read A16Z's investment memos and then like build it. Yeah, because like the super follows and Substack and like Clubhouse and Twitter Spaces and whatever.
Wait, is it the other way around?
I kind of think Instagram is. I think Instagram is the exception, like not the rule, really, and that it's still really hard for any of these companies to successfully clone any of these things. I don't think Twitter Spaces will be a threat to Clubhouse.
You mean Instagram cloning stories from Snapchat? That was like,
absolutely.
Yeah, I think that's like the exception, not the rule.
Also, that hardly killed Snapchat. Like Snapchat's
at an all-time high right now.
Kind of okay,
roughly.
just fine. Thank you. Yeah. So.
But that just shows the power of the network effect with messaging. I do think that Snapchat used to have a lot of influencers who were very interested, or creators, as they're called now. Mm-hmm. But the fact that Instagram really went hard over on the creators and actually did a better job at serving the creators in a lot of ways. Because I was on Snapchat 5 years ago making content, and Snapchat made it very clear through their product decisions and then also communications from their team that they did not give a shit. And Instagram did a bunch of smart features to empower creators on Instagram, even though the stories features on Instagram and Snapchat were nominally the same. Instagram did things like they allowed you to add a link, right, which is something creators want. They gave you better analytics, like all these things to empower creators, and consequently like really blew up stories on Instagram's platform, to the point where I think stories is much bigger on Instagram.
And then TikTok came along and did that to Instagram in a way, like where their video creator tools are like.
Yeah, but I would say it wasn't a direct clone. TikTok is a different beast.
No, so this is all about who's your customer, right? Like, Snapchat actually did exactly the right thing, which is focus on the customer they care about, which is not the influencer creator, but the like like the communications user who wants to snap with their friends and wants to have that actually intimate, connected relationship. And maybe they missed out on this other business they could go build. But I actually think in some ways that other business is off mission for Snapchat. Like, I don't know, I'm not inside of Snapchat, but when I heard Evan talk about it, he seems like he doesn't want to do like, it sounds to me like he doesn't want to do discovery. He doesn't want to do like a bunch of influencer shit.
Well,
that's explicitly not the goal.
I think that was true 7 years ago when they started, and he communicated that, and I think that's true. But I do think, I mean, today they have Spotlight, they have creator features. They added a bunch of creator features to try to compete with Instagram. So I mean, maybe there's a little bit of like, oops, I changed my mind. But
yeah,
you know, like it doesn't. It's
But back
they
to
are working on creator tools.
I think it's fair to say they successfully executed their strategy. They just might have missed out on it.
Yeah, and back to Jamie's point, just like, I mean, with the exception of stories, I guess, the history of big tech companies trying to clone small startup products, it doesn't work out well. Like, look at Google Video instead of buying YouTube, and then they had to spend 1.6 to buy YouTube. Facebook tried to clone features off of Twitter, like they added the whole followers model, and that didn't work. Google Plus tried to kill Facebook with their own social network. Like, none of that stuff has I mean, with the exception of stories, it's hard to think of many examples, and I just don't think that Twitter, I mean, just like a Twitter fleets being a terrible idea. I don't think Twitter Spaces is going to kill Clubhouse.
Does anyone know what the usage of fleets is? Like, does anyone?
I didn't understand fleets. Like, fleets isn't the metaphor because that's like images in a text medium, right? Like what I was expecting the fleets product to be was like temporary like tweets, where that tweet and every tweet in the reply chain to it disappears 24 hours after
you should
post
be
it.
running product.
Maybe you should be
like that's the product.
Maybe you should be running product.
That just seemed like that was the straight port to. I'm sure someone who was actually thought about it could do better, but that was just the straight analogy port of disappearing pictures.
So
I think we should give credit. I think we should give Twitter's product org credit for doing anything after not doing anything for like 8 years. They spent 8 years and they changed the message length. I think that's the only
stars to hearts.
Stars to hearts, exactly. They changed.
Oh yeah, big innovation.
So with Twitter, one of the arguments I made about Clubhouse not being killed by Twitter Spaces is that I think that it is similarly Twitter is a text platform, like you said, Emmett, and then they're trying to add audio. Whereas Clubhouse, you like turn on the app and then you can walk around, you can go to the gym, you can kind of not look at your screen. So it's like almost like a podcast competitor. Whereas with Twitter, it's like you think to pull it out in your mind. You have this like, I'm going to pull it out when I like look at my phone. And so Spaces is kind of incongruous there.
Apps can only get to really get used for one use case. You don't really get there are very few apps you pull out and do 3 different things with. And that just seems to be like, it's like an actual like advantage for your service. Actually, this is an advantage for Twitch versus other like any VOD service. Like, even if in theory their live video thing is just as good as ours, in practice, people just don't think to take out like a VOD product and use it to watch live videos, and they don't think to take out a newsfeed product and use it to like listen to live audio. Like, they could. There's no barrier, but it's like it's actually a pretty strong moat for like it's hard to get customers to use a product for a second reason.
It's so true. Like, I don't watch any pre-recorded stuff on Twitch.
Yeah, we've tried so many times to get people to do that, and they're just like, no, they don't want to, because that's not why they open the Twitch app, and like it's very hard to overcome that. Which I used to like fight that, and now I should have just embrace it.
Back to being copied. Didn't Microsoft try to copy Twitch and had that whole mix thing and tried to steal your best influencer or your best like some of your best streamers like Ninja?
They bought a startup, Beam, and rebranded it Mixer, they went to go compete with us, which I don't. I feel like that's my feeling about competition is like it's actually like I'm always most excited when we have competition because there's like it makes it more like it's more fun when there's like other people in the game playing,
someone to dance on the grave of.
Like, Yeah, well,
Feels
yeah,
more
that
alive
too.
when someone's trying to kill you. You feel more alive
Yes.
when someone's
So,
trying
Emmett,
Feel more alive when
you're-
someone's trying to
you're-
kill you. That's exactly right.
So
Yeah, you're
I think
actually
super
invested on
follow is a great idea,
Clubhouse-
though.
or in Substack, and I wanted to
Like,
ask
that's
you
a-
about your
that's
thoughts on super follows.
I don't think. I mean, I don't. Who knows? Like, I don't. It's always hard to guess what's going to happen. But I don't so much think super follows is like a threat to Substack. I think super follows is just a really good idea. There's a lot of people I follow on Twitter who I'd be excited to read their premium like thought stream, and like I'd pay money for that. And not because I even necessarily like think it's like worth the money, but because I like want to support them. The way I have pay for Patreon for like some people who do like blogging stuff. I just like want to support them. It's not.
Like Substack could be premium blog, and Twitter could just be premium Twitter.
Yeah, I think
it
it
doesn't have to be like a replacement.
what
I think that's what it's going to be mostly.
what kinds of content do you think is going to happen on premium Twitter? Like, should I make a super follow and start putting out my premium thoughts?
I think.
Give out your free startup ideas.
I think your premium. You might want to go back to the sort of Meta Brand for calendar content. I think that will do very well on super follows. Like, I think it's actually no. I think it's amazing because I think that what super follows is doing is creating. There's an entire segment of people who are there. What they basically are good at is like being funny and interesting on Twitter, and I think super follows is going to enable a whole section of them to effectively be employed by the internet. In that, like, we keep adding new ways you can get employed by the internet, and like being a Twitter influencer, super follow person is going to be one of them. Actually, I'm curious what people think about that, like the whole employed by the internet thing. Like it's getting really big.
Yeah.
Like, you started with 2011, you have Uber and the gig economy, right? But it's not like there's not just the gig economy. So many people, like, their job is basically like, oh yeah, the internet kind of sends me money in exchange for me doing stuff.
I mean,
and they don't really have an
really
employer in
right?
the classic sense
You've also
anymore.
seen this amongst journalists who are like who are able to like build up their audience and their following, like much like on Twitter. Like journalists are kind of first class citizens, and they are able to turn that into either Substack revenue down the road or into book deals and that sort of thing. It's a really interesting subject, and I just think it's really cool. You also see the same thing in venture capital now, where you have like the so-called solo capitalists, where you have one person being able to like differentiate from the sort of the firm and to be their own brand.
Do you think that's
Totally.
Do you think that's the future of venture capital? I'm a little bit skeptical because I actually see now that I've been in VC for the last 6 months, I see a lot of advantages to some of these really brand name firms where they're able to like win, really great deals, and there's a lot of pressure on the angel investor side. Like, it's really hard to get into some of the really premium deals. Like, there's founders that I've been begging, I'm like, hey, let me in your round, and they're just like, okay, whatever, bro. Like, so, and I have a reputation. I've been here for a long time, so I think there's, I feel like there is a little bit of an advantage in being with a brand. Now that I've been in, I actually was probably more pro solo capitalist.
That's actually a good point. I remember I was talking to a CEO of like a really hot company. They had term sheets from every VC, and I asked them why they went with Andreessen Horowitz, and he said they felt like winners. I mean, Sequoia's got a lot of wins too.
There you go.
Yeah.
Well, I feel like we've gone through this transition from the gig economy, and now the big thing is like the creator economy, and that's kind of like, if you really look at it a very like loose way, like the gig economy was commodified labor online, and the creator economy is uncommodified artistic labor online. What's the next? Like, what is there another big wave of, be employed by the internet? I guess finance would be like solo capitalist would be a move.
Well,
but like, is there going to be another one of those?
There is one that's happening right now, which I think is really interesting, which is the crypto boom, right? And like NFTs are part of that, but you see this massive amount of wealth creation that's happening because of collective belief, effectively, right, in the value of like crypto assets. And the distribution of crypto assets happened in a completely anti-establishment way, right? Like, it was basically random people who believed in crypto who bought and held them, like T-Con. And thanks to T-Con, myself in a little bit, but there's like way more people than me. And as Bitcoin approaches, has gone to 50,000, 60,000 now, right? And it goes to 1 million. You're going to see this massive not even redistribution, but like I guess people are calling it the flippening, right? Where like you have all the, the more billionaires. If Bitcoin hits 1 million, then you have more billionaires created from crypto assets than from traditional sources. And so, you have this complete random, or not random, but like different algorithm for wealth distribution than ever before. And that is like a form of, I guess, wealth creation or being employed by the internet,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Also,
Although I'd say it's.
oh, no, I'm just going to say, yeah, just to echo your point, one of my favorite things about crypto is that it's the first sort of massive wealth creation where it's the outsiders who are profiting versus the insiders. So it's like these Wall Street banks and big institutions are actually very late to the game and are only starting to get in now. But you've had all these sort of outsiders who wouldn't have had access. It's the opposite of startup investing, where if you're Andreessen or Sequoia, you can get lots of equity in amazing startups, but like an average person can't do that.
Except
it
for I
reminds
think
me
Andreessen invested in the
Did they?
Ethereum ICO. So
Wow.
Oh yeah, probably.
That's up
But
6,000x.
it reminds me of
6,000x.
actually it's the oil boom with like wildcat strikers, where like random people be like find out they have oil on their land, and suddenly they're like a billionaire. And like that shit happened all over the world, and particularly in the United States. There were all these like, oil prospectors, and it was some of the people who just randomly got it, and then a lot of people would just like go out and look for some oil, and then like some of them would randomly get it. And it's a little different, but it had the same kind of like randomized wealth distribution effect that Bitcoin has now, and some of the same environmental issues. So like, it's
Wasn't
sort
a lot of that
interesting-
wealth that ended up transferred over to the
I don't
kind
know.
of companies that ended up buying the prospectors' like rights or land?
Yeah, I mean, for sure. Like over time, it consolidated, which I think is exactly what's going to happen in Bitcoin too. Probably, nothing lasts forever. But it's the same. It just reminded me of it. Sort of a similar kind of history of like this boom of randomly distributed wealth. That like your house happens to be on a giant pool of oil. Congratulations.
You're rich
Like,
now.
So how do you
Have a
guys
bunch
think
of money.
Coinbase's IPO
Yeah.
is going to affect crypto, if at all? Like, is Coinbase kind of going to be sort of a meme stock? Is it going to be on Wall Street bets?
I think there will be a lot of like crypto IPOs that happen to following it, because people are going to, there's going to be a lot of SPACs looking for those assets. There's going to be a lot of like entrepreneurs who have started these exchanges that can see a path to like even more liquidity. So I think that will happen. I don't know about, is it going to be a meme stock? Maybe. Or can you buy the shares with crypto?
That would be
Haven't
funny.
people created like stock, like crypto methods of linking stocks to crypto, to buy stocks, or like tether a stock to like a crypto asset, or be able to buy a stock? I mean, Ticon.
Yeah, people don't use too many of those. There is one for the DPI, the DeFi Pulse Index, that people do buy. I think that's via set protocol on Ethereum, and that kind of is the S&P 500 of DeFi tokens. So if you know projects like Aave, AAVE, and I think it has some Augur and Compound token, and so it's really cool, right? It's like this synthetic stock that exists, and it gets rebalanced and everything, and it's done really well for people who hold it.
I think it's this.
Wait, so-
yeah, go ahead, Emmett.
Has anyone figured out? I was just thinking about like, and I honestly don't know if anyone's tried this, but is like a Vanguard for decentralized finance, where like it's a nonprofit that like as it makes more money, just cuts the overhead, and like that's how Vanguard got so massive. Was basically it's like a non-profit index fund holding.
Yeah,
thing, effectively.
absolutely. I mean, I'd argue smart contracts are already doing that, the so-called like going bankless movement. And this is more of an Ethereum thing. But, you can it's pretty remarkable that with a project like MakerDAO, you can deposit your collateral, say like 5 ETH, and then you can pull out 5,000 DAI, which are stable coins pegged to the US dollar, roughly stable. And you don't have to ask for permission. You don't have to be a US citizen. You don't have to get a bank to approve your loan. It's just amazing. It's all done via a smart contract. It's wild.
What's the cost of executing?
Well, these days, Ethereum fees are sky high, right? So you can't really, unfortunately, crypto is only accessible to like the really large traders these days. I mean, small trades you just wouldn't do, right? You wouldn't move $9 of Ethereum when the fees can range from $9 to $30.
Yeah, that's one.
Is that a fundamental issue, or is that like like I actually don't know enough of how the underlying technology works. Like an internal combustion engine can never be more than, I can't remember what it is. It's like 60% efficient. Even like it's the Carnot maximum. You can't do better than that. Is this like that, or is this just like we haven't engineered the system?
It's the latter. So Ethereum 2.0 is going to solve a lot of these issues, largely with sharding, I think. But there's other things. Proof of stake is really important. But sharding, I think, will overall, in the short run, will have something like a 10 to 100x, I think, impact on throughput. But these problems actually are getting solved. It's just unfortunately very painful in the meantime.
I mean, it's probably why like Top Shot and stuff like that is doing well, because it's like Dapper Labs on an entirely separate. It's not on Ethereum, and so they don't have the same transaction fee problems, and people are trying to hack it, right? Like OpenSea, you can mint stuff for free. Obviously, like it's not worth transferring it if you don't sell it for like more than the gas fees or whatever. But they're like fake minting it, and then you actually only mint it when it gets transferred or something like that.
Well, that's
what I think they're
that's
doing.
basically what happened with my NFTs. You know, after like gas fees were like $30 each, right? So like I wanted to create a lot of NFTs to make it more accessible to a larger audience, but then it wasn't economical after a certain, kind of number, right? Like if you're not selling them for more than $30, right? It's like not economical.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Did you guys see Dylan, the founder of Figma, the thing
What'd he say?
from this week?
What happened?
He had, the I'm gonna reveal how little I know about crypto right now, but the crypto alien, like the little 24 by 24 pixel art things. CryptoPunks. He bought one of the aliens, which there's only 9 of, in 2018 for $6,000 and sold it last week for $8 million.
What?
That's amazing.
Yeah, and so
Okay.
Not only is he rich from Figma, but he's also like a world-class crypto investor.
I need to trade in my like investor card. I don't understand this stuff. It doesn't make any sense. My beautiful girlfriend has cooked us at a lovely dinner, and I'm gonna go eat that with her.
All right, this is a great place to stop.
It's been amazing.
Hopefully you guys have all enjoyed our first episode of OnlyFriends. If you did, bang that like button, subscribe. If you didn't, well, you get what you paid for. We'll see you guys next time. Thanks for joining. Okay, we need like a theme song or like a motto or something.
I literally just sent an email to the Twitch team being like, I have money and I want to set up a thing, and I there's no one online who will sell me a like very easy kit to do this. Can we just like sell that? Because I bet people want to buy it. Like,
do you have to prepend it with "I have money"? I feel like that's like a.
I didn't say. That's not exactly how the email is framed. The email is framed more like, I think that people with money like would want to buy like a nice setup. Like you can buy like the low end setups, and I'm one of them.
Yeah, it's like the thing with like all the people in Congress. Like, did you watch Steve's thing? They all look like half of them have their laptop like tilted at some weird angle. You're like looking up at them from like below.
Yeah, but do they have money? That's part of the problem.
They do. They do have money.
They have your money.
We're not talking about like a lot of money. We're talking about like a very like reasonable amount of money, like a the amount of money to like buy a camera. It's not like.
All right, I just drank a bunch of beer, so I'm gonna go take a piss before we.
Okay.
It says we're recording, by the way.
We're recording, but I'm gonna. Then we'll.
Oh,
we'll
sweet.
start.
Okay.
Go take a piss.
You can keep that.
Go
in
take
there.
a piss.
Keep that in there.
Although
Everybody,
we'll be
anyone who needs to go to the bathroom, go to the bathroom. If you need to get a beer, get a beer. Or you have a beer.
I'll do.
Do I need to be? Do I need to be using my earphones like it says I should, or can I use my speakers?
Yeah.
No, I
Use
do
your
need
earphones. Use your
okay.
earphones. Yeah.